This was the Mother's Day card that he gave Connie. It says, "I love you, Mom, because," and then he fills in, "well, it's a child's instinct to love their mother, but not in all cases. Laugh out loud. My funniest memory of you is when," and he put, "laugh so hard at something that you don't remember." The next one was, "If I had $1 million, I would buy you anything under $1 million and 1 cent. I thank God for you because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you." And he filled out everything. When he was young, around the age of 4, he went through a phase of wanting to be called different names. I would say Gabe, and he would say, "No, Mom, it's Gabriel," or vice versa. Another day he said, "Call me Moses." Another day he wanted to be called Father Joseph that day. So we called him by the name he requested. If we called him by his name, he would remind us what he said. Funny kid. He loved family time, especially Friday nights, family pizza, and movie nights. He was a giver. If he wanted it, he'd give it up to the other person without much of an argument, 95% of the time. A food, a seat, first player on Xbox, etc. He was a self-starter. During homeschool, he'd be the first one up, done, and also started without prompting. He was our little cop of the house. He liked things even and fair. This was even noticed at school. A certificate was given to him in 2008. He likes creating things. We have pictures of Tootsie Roll creations, spiders, tigers, birds, etc. The very last thing he made was a bank. He wrote a comic book. Great invention ideas. He was telling us something new frequently. He was a little chatterbox. Now he has all of heaven to talk to. He was responsible. He couldn't wait to get a job, work for money. He did dishes every time without even being asked, told, or reminded. He wasn't a pushover. He didn't give in to peer pressure, and he was his own person. When asked about if he gets pressured into doing things, he replied, "No, if I say no and they keep asking, I get upset and walk away." This is from Connie, his mother. My personal nickname for Gabe was Gaby Gabe. As he got older, he didn't want me calling him. He didn't want me saying "I love you" when I dropped him off at school or out in public. So we came out with our own way of saying "I love you" without actually saying it. We said it by using all 10 fingers, which means "I love you very, 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 very much." And he was happy with that. The night before he died, we sat one on each end of the couch. We were on Facebook and sent notes back and forth to each other and laughing. The morning of his death, Mike and I left for work. Gabe was awake, and as we were going out the door, we looked at each other and said, "I thank God I had the opportunity to say that one last time before he left to be with the Lord. I will always treasure that." Our family has been very blessed and honored to have Gabe as a son, brother. He will be loved for eternity and missed until we reunite again in heaven. Gabe, we have you in our hearts and always will. We love you so much and will deeply miss you until we are together again.
Connie always told me that Gabe wanted to be like me, and he loved me, and actually the reason why we were together on Wednesday when he passed away is because he just wanted to hang out with me. I was on my way to a meeting with some of the youth leaders of other churches in town, and we were planning this overnighter. And I was ready to go. I went downstairs. His shirt was still off. He was on the computer, and I just said, "Hey, I'm leaving." He's like, "No, wait, I want to be with you." And he came. I'm saying that because I had written a book, and Gabe wanted to write a book. So his book ended up being like 5 pages. And I had not read it till last night. Because we had this plan of just sitting down together, and I would go over it with him and provide opportunities for him to maybe work in certain parts of that book and answer some questions and make it longer and better. And I really didn't read it till last night. And when I read it, I just realized the crazy imagination of Gabe. I mean, you heard some of the simple things, like he wanted to be called Father Joseph one day, and we had to call him that. And he was really like that. He was a chatterbox, and he would constantly talk. So much so that on an everyday occurrence, I would usually roll my eyes and in my mind say, "Please be quiet." I wouldn't tell him that, and I would roll my eyes only when he was turning away. But it was on a daily basis, and I'm sure he's giving an earful to Jesus right now, just talking and dancing because he was hyper all the time. But when I read his story, and I just couldn't escape. This was Gabe. On page 1 there's a monster mutating, right? By page 2 there's 2 or 3 monsters. By page 3 there's 36 monsters that humanity has to fight against. By page 4 there's 2,000 monsters. By page 5, humanity, in order to survive, created the hermoquake. This was a weapon that created a herd of F-10 tornadoes, which do not exist, by the way. But humanity created this weapon in order to survive, and at the same time it created earthquakes. And somehow, we survived. That was Gabe. But really, if you heard some of what Connie wrote, he had a heart for God. And I'll transition out of this part of the service by talking briefly a little bit more about that. I wrote a song that has been stuck in my head almost every moment since I've written it, and it's helped me get through this. Because when I'm feeling guilty, when I feel the blame, when I think about those last moments, and they were happy moments in the van. He was, as usual, bouncing on the chair. He had taken off his seatbelt that moment because he was trying to get rid of some ants in the van because I had put a whole bunch of brush and branches and stuff that we were going to dump after the meeting. And what was I saying? The song has gotten me through that, just thinking about those moments in the van. So I'll sing that in a moment. I'm not a singer, but I have to because it's been such a help, and it's about us as a family. But he had a heart for God, and really the day before he died, he asked me, and I don't know if it was because of his time at Glacier Bible Camp, maybe some of these questions came to his mind, but he asked me, he said, what was the body of Jesus like after he died and rose again? So we kind of talked about that a little bit. It's kind of a theological question. But in a short answer, I told him, first of all, Jesus was 100% God, but he was 100% human. And when he died and rose again, he was still human, according to even Jesus. And he said, I have to go to my Father. His body was transformed to a glorified body. And at that point, Jesus could go through walls. He could, do the supernatural thing with his body. And Gabe looked at me and he goes, I like that. I want that kind of body. I want to be with Jesus right now. And I'm glad that he had his focus on God. I can honestly say I'm pretty sure he's with Jesus, and I'm so happy about that.